So, ladies and gentlemen, don't know how long this is really going to go. I feel like in order to do this trip that I'm going to talk about, real justice, I would need more time than I think I'm planning to give right now. But as you'll see, we're going to talk about this experience that I had. And I think I'm going to talk about the fact that there might be a point where I start focusing on some of the elements of this experience as a professional teacher. I had a psychedelic experience where some of you might know that I've already done this before in 2016 on my birthday. I did it again this year on my birthday, 5 years later. It's a Sex-Magick, Tantra, Tarot, Quabala, Kundalini ceremony. The Tantra, the Sex-Magick Tantra of Tarot. The idea is that the divine inside of you is a divine lover. You are a princess trying to give your heart with full devotion and surrender to that light that we saw at the center of the Milky Way universe. That divine light of infinite power and potential is trying to woo you into its embrace. And if you understand this through the romantic psychology of bhakti, of devotion, then you will begin to look for omens and little symbols and fractals of the universe speaking to you as that central arbiter of all magic and meaning. And one example of the universe speaking to you is the tarot. So I did a magical ceremony where I essentially did lots of psychedelic drugs. I did lots of the meditations, the Quabala cross, the lesser banishing ritual, the Pentagram, as well as Kriya, Kundalini energy invocation. Got myself, while I was extremely high, to a point of intense concentration. And from there, I did a Quabala tarot ceremony, where I unfolded the tarot cards in the shape of the Quabbalistic tree of life. And I have a interpretation of what each card means at each Sephirothic space, which comes from Aleister Crowleyan writing, the Golden Dawn system of magic, and connecting the tarot card to the Sephiroth. That is going to be something that eventually I want to speak to in How to Rock Spirit. I treat these things just like I treat an astrological chart. An astrological chart is a statement of trajectory, but trajectory in a frozen moment can never fully be fated to express the trajectory. Just because we are what we are in our astrology chart doesn't mean that we can't roast those seeds of karma with the pure awareness of ourselves that exists beyond the astral spheres of our karma. If you are willing to push yourself against the annals of your past life memory energy, sometimes it's a difficult go, but it is possible with the right application to alter the course of fate using your God-given divine will, power, instinct, and respect for the ritual and ceremony of earth and human energy. So I did this whole ceremony. I laid out the tarot cards, and it gave me a certain thing, and it told a story of what I believe I was experiencing, very much what I'm experiencing now. I'm under, every 5 years I do this ceremony, and I believe that I'm under the influence of a new, deep, internal, energetic narrative. And it's because I believe in it. I believe in what the cards that I unfolded, I believe in the narrative that is trying to be spoken there. I believe the mystical numerology of the cards I used and the Sephiroth can act as a mystical channel for divination of myself. And I see it. I have it deeply in my unconscious because I've been reading about this tarot, the cards that I picked. I've been digesting them, and I really don't put that much energy into them because they're there. Just like with astrology, it's there, whether you are going to try to manifest it or not. So the energy of the cards is there. I've stewed through it. I typed it all up, and now I'm abiding with a certain set of subtle symbolic resonances that I can see happening in my experience. And it was the romance of this, the idea is that you are throwing your belief into your connection to that cosmic light at the center of the Milky Way that we keep invoking, that it's not a game, that you actually believe that you are an emanation from that central bit of power, and that it's intelligent, and that the universe has your back. Even the lessons that it puts you through is the universe, is Ganesha, the element of guru, which is your own animal instinct trying to smash against its limits in order to realize its limits, in order to realize and acknowledge unnecessary internal compulsions so that you can be freed up from the compulsions and the libidinal energies that matter. So, let's unfold that narrative a little bit. Essentially, to make the full connection here, guys, the reason I did this was because I like to apply that romance to the divinity within me. I'm actively playing on a Neptunian experiment where essentially I'm making a connection to the mysticism of the phenomenon of the things that happen to me with my own unconscious, and I'm opening an experiment where I'm reaching my hand out into the ether and seeing if there is a caring or at least real consciousness that grabs the hand that I perpetuate in the etheric headspace. And seeing if anything reaches back. Seeing if I can apply myself to fate in this way. And that fate can apply itself to me in this way. So this is how my psychedelic experiences tend to go. Lately, I've been experimenting with a delightful compound. As many of you may know, I like to include in this ceremony of symbolic energy engagement with fate, I like to include psychedelics in this experiment. Psychedelics are typically understood as I would put it, as I often say, psychedelic medicines. We call them medicines for a reason. They represent a type of compound which have the capacity to alter the brain's default mode of operating. The alteration on the mind's and the brain's default mode of operation causes us to see our unconscious in context, because we are being chemically, metabolically lifted, or dimensionally, from a dimensional vantage, we are forced to see the fact that our mind is working differently than it normally does. Therefore, if this is different than how it normally works, we can see how it normally works in context. So, psychedelics have this capacity to, as I understand it, we have neural networks in our brain that typically fire off in, again, a default way. And we have reward punishment network systems, which our neurogenetic memory causes us to keep perpetuating in order to keep us at a default mode of existence, which we know from having existed so far keeps us alive. Much of it is so subconscious and unconscious that, again, it's hard to see us. It's hard to see the nature of our subconscious and our unconscious operating. Psychedelics can alter the filters of our awareness. I would make this akin to thinking of how a blind person often can not really hear better, but that is to say they're not distracted by their vision, which means that you can focus your concentration on those dimensions of perception that come from your ears and your smell more intensely. And you might find sensations of reality that are there which you couldn't find by opening your eyes. So, in the same way that a blind person can develop a better sense of their hearing, in the same way, a person whose neural networks are being closed off from mundane sensory phenomena is allowed to experience other phenomena of the mind which you might not typically have noticed. And this is for better or worse. Psychedelics can be a difficult experience because you can acknowledge aspects of yourself that are not serving you, but they're still there, and transformation can be a difficult thing. But psychedelics can certainly aid in illumination because of the nature of its altering the perceptive default perception mode of the witness, of the person experiencing it. For those who are interested enough in the Vedic application of reality, this kind of alteration of consciousness can be a useful tool. There used to be a time when people didn't necessarily need the use of psychedelics to alter their minds in this way. But I believe that these tools have always been useful and always probably even been used, even by those yogis who can take the mushroom, have the experience, and then say, I don't need the mushroom to have that experience. I think that the mushroom can always be considered to be a useful arbiter for this alteration of consciousness. And I think it's especially important to consider how powerful it can be when you are engaged in a psychedelic experience and you are applying the sacred yogic art of self-inquiry and concentrated self-realization. This is a general point that I would like to make to people, that oftentimes when we are trying to experience meditation, we're trying to have an experience of divinity, people in Kriya yoga can often get frustrated because they want to feel it. They want to feel divinity. They want to feel like they are a part of the current of the Kundalini energy that we talk about but don't see. We don't have evidence for. There's no scientific evidence for it, at least by the Western definition of what scientific means. The Vedic mind considers Kundalini phenomenon to be quite scientific. It just depends on how you define scientific. So, in my experiences, I love to use mushrooms. They are probably my primary substrate for applying the alteration of consciousness that can lead to this type of illumination. Another ally of mine that is my favorite ally is Hawaiian Baby Woodrose. This is a potent little seed that apparently came from India, I believe. At some point, Hawaiian Baby Woodrose, as well as Morning Glories, I think. Morning Glories might be native to South America, but I know that Hawaiian Baby Woodrose also hangs out around the Southern America area. I think that Hawaiian Baby Woodrose in particular came from India. It's really got an Indian flavor, but really when I do deep Hawaiian Baby Woodrose trips in combination with other psychedelics, I find that the Hawaiian Baby Woodrose, there's more going on to digesting the seed of Hawaiian Baby Woodrose than just what people call the chemical LSA, which is inside of Hawaiian Baby Woodrose. LSA is chemically similar to LSD, but LSD is more pure. LSD is lysergic acid diethylamide. Diethylamide is what makes the LSD compound more pure than LSA. There's really only one synthetic diethylamide of the lysergic acid. Lysergic acid diethylamide is a very specific synthetic molecule. Lysergic acid amide, I believe there are different types of it. There are it's like got a spectrum, and it's got, you know, it's almost like its own genetic code. Each seed, each species, it's like cannabis, you know, like mushrooms are mushrooms. Some of them have, it's all psilocybin. Some of them have a little bit of MAOI inhibitors, which make them stronger and different. That's what people are coming to discover about mushrooms. But some of them don't have that. In either case, psilocybin is psilocybin. There's no difference in their metabolic chemistry. Cannabis is different. You got indica, you got sativa. They're born in different parts of the, you know, the northern and southern hemisphere, different equators. They have a whole scope and spectrum of possible metabolic chemical effects. Acid is acid. Psilocybin is psilocybin. But I believe that LSA also has a bit of a living spectrum, and that's part of the reason why they're interesting to me. So I've got mushrooms, I've got LSA, Hawaiian Baby Woodrose in particular, and I have been experimenting with something else that I have been deeply enjoying. this has really kicked up my game a notch. And I did this same thing. The last time I did this was 5 years ago on my last deep trip. I got much more faith in it now, although it's heavy. And it was this compound that probably made this one of the heaviest experiences that I've ever had. For those who are watching now, I'm talking about when this past November 8th, 2021, I got really fucked up. Way higher than I thought I would. I was in the middle of town beside a river, and it was very cold, and it's a funny story. I felt like I was in a dream, and I threw my lamp in the river because it was a deep metaphor. I didn't need the lamp. I didn't want, because I am the light, and I wanted to embrace the darkness, and I threw this fucking the sweet little electric lamp I had, threw it in the Trent River. And I felt like I was dreaming, and I almost was like, if I'm dreaming, I can do anything. I feel like I died, and I can jump into that river, soak all my clothes, I'm already to the bone freezing, and get that lamp. Because I was super fucked up. So, it's a funny story. One of the things that got me so fucked up on this particular thing, where I went a little overboard, I'm very used to doing very high amounts of psychedelics and going into town and just being like, hi people, how's it going? And I'll do yoga and meditation and these things that keep me where I need to be. And when people say, you know, I'm very used to I got long hair, and most people will be like, hi there, Mr. Long-haired guy with the crazy clothes. And I'm very used to it. So I can go and be kind of high. People, I mean, thankfully, you know, now weed is legal in Canada, so I can say, oh, I've just been smoking some weed. Yes, I am high. You don't know how high, but yes, I am high. So, on this particular journey, what really got me rocked and rolled was Syrian Rue. Ladies and gentlemen, none other than. I got a nice big bag of it at some point. You can get them online. They're considered to be incense. I think I basically got one that I wanted to ensure was like organic, but ultimately it still had to say on the thing, not for human consumption. It was that kind of operation. And Syrian Rue is a compound. You might be asking, like, why, I guess? I mean, yeah, it's just another compound, I guess, but there is a particular logic I'm abiding by here. Some of you might have heard of this. There's a thing being talked about right now. It's called Silowaska. Silowaska. I'm just sorry, I'm checking to make sure everything's all good on my computer here. So you might get what I'm getting at there. For those of you who know, ayahuasca comes from using the ayahuasca root. It's a brown, thick root. It's a root. They take all the dirt out of it, and they grind it. It's almost like turmeric or something like that. And then they put it into water. They boil these sometimes it's big pieces of ayahuasca that they kind of just mince or whatever, but I think they usually grind it into a powder and let all that cook for a couple of hours. And what happens with ayahuasca is the ayahuasca root itself, I believe that the ayahuasca does not actually have DMT in it. DMT is what everybody's heard of. It's the stuff that Terrence McKenna was all about. You could smoke it and you'll see these glibus, glittering, self-existing, dribbling basketballs and gnomes and machine elves beyond time. The businessman's acid is what they called it in the 60s. Because you could sit down in your suit, smoke DMT, and you'll be blasted for 10 minutes, but your body eats it very quickly. I'll explain why in a moment. Your body eats it very quickly, so after 10 minutes, it's completely flushed out of your system. You can grab your briefcase and go back to work before your break is even over. Briefcase acid is what they called it. So DMT is this thing that gets you super high. Now, this is what's funny about DMT and about mushrooms. There's lots of people who talk about the fact, you know, there's a book called the DMT, the Spirit Molecule, that kind of talks about this very fascinating and special way of understanding what DMT is. But it essentially can be concentrated into a form that you can take, and if you take it, you get very high, and you get completely zapped into a transcendental experience. Depending on the different ways that you either smoke it, you can snuff it, or you can do it intravenously, which is apparently the best way to do it. Or you vaporize it is the other idea. And DMT will flush through you for 10 minutes, but our bodies eat it very quickly. Why is that? Well, when you think about it, it's good when the body can digest something quickly. That means that it's very close to the body's natural chemistry. All of us humans have deposits of iron and copper, distillates from mercury in the air, and all these crappy heavy metals in the water and in our food and in everything. And these heavy metals sit in our bodies as toxins, and this is why some people are all about fasting and flushing and purging all that stuff out, because you don't realize how much it's slowing you down, and it's heavy. Stops you from abiding by a much more light, loose human body. DMT don't stick. DMT is out of your body in 10 minutes, and no one could ever possibly say that it was even in there in any exaggerated state. The reason is because DMT is so naturally close to the human's inherent metabolic process. We have DMT flowing through us right now, or else you and I wouldn't be here to have consciousness talking about it. What I often think about DMT, you know, there was one point when I was talking with a guy in Peru. I went to Peru and did ayahuasca. And I was talking with a guy, and me and him were saying that we had this experience almost where we were inside our minds. We're playing almost like the game Spore. It's a game where you can create little monsters with heads of different sizes, different eyes, different bodies, 8 legs, 7 legs, and you can create all these creatures in this game. And when we were on ayahuasca, if we closed our eyes, we had the ability to do this. It was a game of Spore in our minds, and I could create creatures and create buildings and architecture, and it was all imaginary, but it was like I was having a lucid dream. But although I could open my eyes and still see everybody there, but if I closed my eyes and concentrate enough, I could do this. That's DMT at work. This is my own understanding of this. You know, when you close your eyes and you see a bowl of fruit on a table, you know, you're seeing it. You're seeing something. That vision is inside of your mind. Like when you're looking at this TV screen, there are molecules and chemical processes going on that's making this specific image appear on your screen. In the same way, your internal mind also has an internal computer which conveys the images of the imagination. And part of the imagination, part of the substratum of our grip on the oceanic nature of consciousness is DMT and our relationship with it. As I understand it, DMT in some ways is the metadata of that bowl of fruit in your mind. Everything of human consciousness has to experience itself through the gate of DMT. And this is why some call it the spirit molecule, because if you apply the language of reality to reality itself, it does this funny fractal consciousness realization thing. It's like, I don't know, it's like any animal seeing itself, and it has a self-realization because of the nature of the confrontation with itself. DMT can be kind of like that, because it is the transdermal, omnipotent vessel of consciousness in a certain way. So when we have a DMT experience, it's flushed out very quickly because it's so inherent to human consciousness in general. And it can have some very interesting doorway changes and perception changes because of the way that it alters consciousness in the same way that we talked about previously. Now, hello, Psychedelic Mania. Nice to see you, my friend. I'm just looking at some of our comments here. It's nice to see different people. Clarissa, Jamie Lyles is asking questions about MDMA, and these can be chemical keys in certain ways to different things inside of ourselves. Very interesting consciousness. Now, DMT is chemically, molecularly, very similar to psilocybin. This is one of the reasons why psilocybin is so non-toxic. If you wanted to kill yourself with mushrooms, you would have a heart attack before you actually had a neurotoxic response. You'd have a heart attack because if you got that much mushrooms in your system, you're having an imagination. You're so lost in your imagination that you could actually have something, you know, if you have enough mushrooms, like you could have a crazy catatonic experience that could probably do something to you that would actually make you have a heart attack. I don't know, but this is my point, is that you would have a heart attack before you would have a neurotoxic response to psilocybin mushrooms, which means that you can take a lot of it without it being toxic, which means that it is, for whatever reason, very close to our natural organic metabolic process. You must understand what I mean by that. If you have something in your body that's very close to your natural chemistry, your body can break it down because it's a natural part of it. You know, like if you have like an unnatural thing, like some kind of pesticide or a heavy metal. Heavy metals are heavy and dense, and they're not part of the organic matter of our bodies, and so they are toxic. They sit in our bodies and obstruct the natural flow of energy. If we want the flow of energy to be happening while still being grounded, then we will want all of the things inside of our body to be already close to its organic nature. That's why, you know, when you're going and doing meditation experiences or any kind of heights of consciousness experience, you'll typically be wanting to eat fruits and nuts and things that are closer to what humans have been metabolically getting for a long time. I digress. The point here is that anything that's close to our natural neurochemistry and body chemistry will be flushed out of the system, which means they tend to be better for us. Now, mushrooms are awesome for that. DMT is awesome for that. And the connection I want to make here is that DMT and mushrooms are chemically similar, and in fact, they're molecularly actually similar. If you look at DMT at its chemical structure, I don't have a slide for this, I wish I did, but DMT looks chemically, molecularly similar, built up of the same protons, neutrons, and things. It's only off by like one small chemical group. Psilocybin, which is in mushrooms, is only off in one chemical group from DMT. And no other psychedelic is like that. No other psychedelic is as close to DMT as mushrooms. Now, this is why somebody got this idea to experiment with what people are calling psilohuasca. When we do ayahuasca, we combine DMT, we combine the ayahuasca root with another plant that has DMT in it. Most people think that ayahuasca has the DMT, but that's not the case. Ayahuasca actually cleans you out, and it has what's called an MAO inhibitor. Because these chemicals, psilocybin and DMT, are so close to the body's natural biochemistry, we have enzymes that flush them out, and this keeps them at an even pace. If you were, we all have DMT floating around in our bodies, and we have enzymes that eat that DMT as soon as it starts to get too big. It's like a biological survival mechanism that we have, and when you meditate, those enzymes in some ways are reduced in a little bit, and you're allowed to enter a transcendental headspace. That's how the yogis in the past, in some ways, would have been playing with their consciousness and the activation of these enzymes and the deactivation of these enzymes that eat DMT at a given pace, so that we don't walk around, you're not flying in a plane, being the pilot of a plane, and you suddenly get flooded with DMT, and all of a sudden you're in a dream and you're going to kill everyone in the cockpit. We need this rhythm to the metabolic process of our transcendental experiences, because we also need to be on Earth. And this is why we have these enzymes that flush DMT out of the system. These enzymes are called monoamine oxidizers. Monoamine oxidizer, yeah, I believe that's what they're called. And they're MAOs, and an MAOI is what is in ayahuasca. You might have heard this before. The enzyme is called monoamine oxidizers, and it's these monoamine oxidizers that eat DMT and eat mushrooms so that it floods out of our body, so that we're not in an intense mystical experience while we're in the cockpit of a plane. If we were to eat DMT, like for example, many of the foods that we have, like regular salad and lettuce and arugula and stuff, have DMT in them. It's part of the process of those plants and things that give us that natural good feeling, but our bodies get that little DMT kick and then flushes it out instantly because of this enzyme that is developed in us evolutionarily. When you take certain plants have a concentration of DMT. And, for example, Psychotria viridis is what people use in Peru. This is full of DMT. They put it in there with the ayahuasca root. The DMT inside the Psychotria viridis is the actual DMT that gives you the visions, that gives you the light show. It's the ayahuasca and the nature of the ayahuasca that filters the DMT in different ways, filters the pace of the enzymes, only kills certain enzymes in order to interact in certain ways with DMT. That's why different ayahuascas can be kind of different in different ways. So, when you combine DMT with an MAO inhibitor like ayahuasca root, what happens is the ayahuasca root stops the enzymes from eating the DMT that's in your body. And then you fully experience for what tends to be like 10 hours before you start to get those enzymes back. You tend to experience a completely different shade of the psychedelic experience. And the only way to tap into there's an important healing element to this, which I applied this time, thankfully. I didn't fully apply it when I first did the Syrian Rue experience. It's fasting, dieta. It's a very important part of this experience. Because since you are removing certain enzyme activity inside your body by ingesting ayahuasca, certain things that would normally kill us we use those enzymes to kind of flush out as well. For example, yogurt, cheese, certain types of chocolate. That's more of the tryptophan thing, but like there are certain things that you can't eat when you do ayahuasca because you've lost the enzymes that would protect you from those things. As well, there's a general consciousness of fasting, not drinking alcohol, not eating too much things with tryptophan in it, including ripe fermented fruits, chocolate, coffee, this sort of thing. And I'm a very water guy, and I love all those things. It's a very, the Venus in me can really hold on to those good feelings that all those things give. I've always wanted to kind of dive into fasting a little bit, and this was my time to finally do it. I fasted for 4 days in a way, not really, I fasted in the dieta. I didn't eat the foods that I wasn't supposed to eat for ayahuasca, as well as indulgent things. Tried to stay away from fats. I just ate a big hunk of salmon the day before, I think, and I also had some certain things. I ultimately kept it very light. And I was also applying fasting consciousness in the spiritual sense. But I think I'll get to that. But the point is that part of the ayahuasca experience at its best is that you're fasting, letting go of the physical reactive complex to certain securities that used to be based in the physical. The physical. You start to want to eat less. You get less cravings for those things that you would physically get, and this is when you can get into some deep meditation pockets in an ayahuasca ceremony and really see parts of yourself that you wouldn't typically think about or ponder on. The same thing happens with mushrooms is my whole point here, folks. If you ever wanted to explore it, ayahuasca is where the same process that we apply to ayahuasca, instead of using Psychotria viridis, which has DMT in it, you use the ayahuasca root and mushrooms, because mushrooms are so chemically similar to DMT that it would give you a real strong, certainly a difference to the experience. It unfolds it in a very deep way. Now, what I did is instead of using ayahuasca root as my MAO inhibitor, the thing that blocks the enzymes, I used Syrian Rue, which also has these certain, they call them, it's like telekinetic compounds, as well as telepathy, I believe it's called. It's supposed to open up sensitivity to neurocerebrospinal energetic fields, as I would understand it. So Syrian Rue was my replacement for ayahuasca in my Psychedelic experiment. I used Syrian Rue and I used mushrooms. So now those were the main pieces of my psychedelic experience, folks. We had mushrooms, we had Hawaiian Baby Woodrose, we had Syrian Rue, and we had a cannabis beverage, which added up to about 6 milligrams of THC and CBD plus cannabis terpenes infused. I'm going to talk about doses in just a moment. I just want to peek at my comments for a moment here. My friend Wilton Violin has asked, do I think incense makes a difference in meditation? I would say that for me, depending on the type of meditation that you want to experience, you really should experiment for yourself if any sensation will ground you in your meditation experience, and you should. I often have meditations where I listen to music or a guided meditation, and I will have incense scent, and it grounds the experience, certainly, and anchors it in the senses, which is a good thing for certain types of meditation. Ultimately, I couldn't say for Kriya Yoga because I'm still only interested in it. I'm not an officiate of it. But I would say, Wilton, the only person who can really answer that is yourself. I say experiment with it. Some people will be aided by the grounding of the senses through sound or incense. Some people won't. You might find it's a good training wheel, but then eventually you want to be able to do it without it. And a training wheel, if it gets you from A to B, then it's what was necessarily in the moment, right? Hello, Leah Black. Greetings from Canada, from my friend in California. So, our story continues. I went to my dad's cottage, and I had my whole family kind of up this weekend for my birthday, which was an interesting thing because my family are all, you know, typical of Earth people. Everyone, we were all wanting to drink and to kind of be merry for my birthday. It's my 30th birthday. It's funny, I always have this funny thing where I want to perpetuate to everybody energetically that I appreciate you guys all being here, and I'm gonna party. And we had fun. Like, thankfully I play music. I have lots of things that engage in like in the indulgence of Venus without necessarily needing too many drugs or anything. I smoked a bit of weed for the most part, drank lots of water, tried to keep with my fast, only ate the key foods, and I jammed with my family. And they all had some drinks, and I was there laughing and having fun. My girlfriend was there. We had a good time all weekend, and then my birthday, I believe, was on the Monday. It was November 8th. So everybody went home, and I hung out with my dad, who is at his cottage. So my dad owns a cottage in Campbellford, Ontario. It's right by the Trent River. It was November 8th, which meant it was pretty cold already, but I was able to bounce around all day. Thank you, Mia Moore, for the happy birthday. I was able to jump around all day. I went to get different things at the store, and I prepared my beverage, my potion, around 2 p.m. And the days before this, I had been embarking on not only a physical fasting, but I've played with fasting before. And I know that you can't just not eat food and then keep being yourself. Because for me, my mind is very busy. I got so many YouTube video ideas I want to do, so many things I want to do with my girlfriend, so many things that I want to talk with other people, business, you know, and just rock and rolling and applying my discipline to the many things that I want to do. And I find that there are times where I have to get in tune with the overactive nature of that. I'll work myself to death and I'll forget about the heart expanse. And this is part of what I wanted to deeply program into myself through the symbol of this ceremony under the suggestiveness of these psychedelic medicines. So, the whole weekend I fasted and was enjoying everybody and loved everybody, and I got all the love for them because they were there for me, and that's sacred and special no matter what. But I didn't drink too much. I just laughed and the whole thing. And on the Monday, I kept internally fasting. Whenever my mind would start to go on about things, I would basically just drop the speediness of it, get into a heart-centered place of pranayama, calmness, which I really had to practice. Even before this, I've been practicing this anyway, and I know that if I had not been practicing continually for months, getting in touch with the equilibrium of my prana, of my breath, and then I just tried to do it randomly for this ceremony, I know that it wouldn't actually be there. This is something that you've got to constantly hack at in order to do it well during a psychedelic ceremony like this. So whenever my mind would start to steer off, especially because when you're fasting, you're kind of purifying your mind and your body. And so I had like lots of brilliant ideas for things I wanted to do, and sometimes I would just let those go in my notebook. But as soon as it started to become over fascinating about just my brain just taking me over, I would catch it, abide in the heart space, and put down my notebook and just chill. I did a lot of just breathing and meditating and kupsadhana, letting the clouds go by while I stayed present with the self and the essence of what the self might want to tell me. Because I knew that once I did the psychedelics and I went and did my ceremony, that I would be having visions and things coming to my brain. And I would be wanting to practice letting the detritus go, separating the wheat from the chaff, and just being in the pure heart-centered presence of what my spirit was trying to tell me. So, around 2 o'clock, I created my concoction. And this is how I did it. I got 4.5 grams of mushrooms. I got 4 Hawaiian Baby Woodrose and 2.8 grams of Syrian Rue. Ground up the Syrian Rue into a powder. I snipped the Hawaiian Baby Woodrose seeds into pieces and threw them into the Syrian Rue as well. And I threw 4.5 grams of dried mushrooms into the container as well, into the coffee grinder. I spun up in a coffee grinder until it was a powder, an absolute powder. I took off the lid and I had 2 cups. I poured the mixture into a folded piece of paper, split the dose in half, put 1/2 of the dose into one big cup, and then the other half of the dose into another big cup. Then what I did throughout the whole, from 2 o'clock until about 9 p.m., I let the mixture sit in pure lemon juice. I cut a lemon in half, squeezed it on one of those lemon reamer things, so it was all the juice came out, including the pulp. For the 1/2 the lemon, I put it in 1 cup. The other half the lemon, I squeezed it, got the pulp and everything, put it into the other cup. And from there, I let those 2 sit in my fridge in the dark for 7 hours. And there's more of me fasting, hanging out with my dad. It's a funny thing. What I was saying is that for moments like this, I have this whole psychedelic thing planned out. I'm fasting, I'm purifying my consciousness, and my mind is just mostly thinking about very esoteric things. The meaning of the LBRP, the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, and then going through it in my head so that I have it practiced for when I get to my ceremony. Because I had been practicing all this time the quabbalistic cross, the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, and Kriya yoga meditations and practices. So, and I'm hanging out with my dad. My dad's watching like Bon Jovi series on TV. Talking to me just like, you know, can you believe the piano player in this band, Dust? I'm just like, yeah, Dad. The truth be told, I love my pops, and any time that I can hang out with them is beautiful. So a lot of the times that was helping me open to my heart energy at a human level. Everything happens for a reason, folks, you know. I could have been frustrated at the fact that I'm trying to do this psychedelic, esoteric thing, and I can't meditate fully on it because I'm hanging out with my dad and he's a normie like everyone else in my life aside from me because I'm fucking weird. And I could think of it that way, but there was a heart space in me that said that this is a person who love is my love in life is a part of, and my idea of what he is and what he's expressing has nothing to do with that love, and his idea of what I'm fucking doing has nothing to do with it either. I'm there with my dad, and I'm just gonna hang out with him and smoke a little bit of weed and chill, but still remaining in that fasting consciousness until he goes to bed. And he went to bed around 9:30. At this, so, you know, I'd been stirring my 2 cups all the time. At about 8 o'clock, I took out my cannabis beverage. It's like the size of like a tall boy, I think, basically, or like even smaller than that. I popped it up, poured the cannabis beverage into the 2 drinks. So now these drinks are each about like that much in a cup that's like pretty wide. It's a lot. It's very different from a typical ayahuasca thing. Now, this is what I did with this experiment. This time, I experiment like this. These drinks were really friggin' brutal. But something was telling me in my brain that the lemon was going to leach the MAOs from the Syrian Rue and all the good stuff from the mushrooms and all the good stuff from the Hawaiian Baby Woodrose. I had a feeling that the lemon juice was going to leach it all. And it did. This was like the purest experience I've ever had of psychedelics. So, the first cup, I just gotta have an iron stomach for this sort of thing. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This time it was in the halfway point. I was cocky about it at first and kind of blasted the whole first drink back, and including the sediment at the bottom. I drank the sediment of one of these drinks. I drank it through, and it was it's quite the flavor. And it was long range difficult rather than ayahuasca, which was for me these little shots of something pretty heavy. It was just a shot. You know, you close your throat chakra, let that actual legitimate puke come back down in your system. Just one shot. Okay, I'm done. Good. And then the shaman says, do you want another one? And you're like... that was me after my 5th or 6th ayahuasca. At first, it wasn't that bad, but then it got heavier. So for me doing this, it wasn't as hard-hitting as the ayahuasca. It wasn't as thick. But I would stir it up and like try to get the sediment. And for the first one, the sediment was all the way through, and it was tough and long. Not as excruciating because it wasn't as concentrated, but like this gross lemon earth water that was like... Bleh. I just like to be expressive. It's medicine, you know. Sometimes the medicine doesn't always taste great. So I did that at about 9:30. That was half of the dose given. So that's like 2 grams mushrooms, 1.5 Syrian Rue, and 2 Hawaiian Baby Woodrose, all back. At this point, by the way, I also took a half hit of acid. Should have probably mentioned that. On top of all this, I like to do a half hit of acid for these things because the acid lasts the longest. So after the most intense parts of the experience, all the mushrooms and everything have hummed the heaviest. And then, you know, it was 5 in the morning and I was still high on the acid. And because I was high on that half hit of acid still, I could still pull things out of the peak of the psychedelic experience. Pull things from the peak that happened at about 2 in the morning, right? So, drank the first potion. It was pretty tough, but I got it through. Now the second potion, I had this instinct to try this new idea. Because I remember the first time I did it, I had an intuition of something, and I was correct about what that intuition was, which is that if I drink the sludge, I'm going to have a difficult gastrointestinal experience later on, because that's what happened in 2016. I drank the sludge at the bottom, and it made me throw up. Hard to say whether I should have or not. I almost feel like part of me says that I should have, although I was, at this point, it's just the nature of the chaos of this kind of psychedelic thing. If I had been throwing up in the middle of town on the road in public, from having drank the sediment on the second, people might have been asking me if I was okay, and I was too fucked up to deal with human language at that point. So it was good that I didn't drink the sediment this time, and I still got equally as high. That was the thing that was interesting to me. It showed me two different things that I could do with this experience, which was drink just the juice and leave the sediment at the bottom, and that would be a less gastrointestinal purge, which meant more of a different visionary psychedelic that you can kind of enjoy. Which ayahuasca, at its truest essence, you're supposed to kind of have the, like the, don't forget that this body is given to you, and have respect for it, and realize your mortality at the deepest gastrointestinal level. That's what part of ayahuasca at its best healing. And I kind of missed out on a bit of that. I didn't end up throwing up, but I had, because I drank the sediment of the one, drank most of the, basically all the juice at the second one, and I actually threw up a little bit. That's why all the dose that I've given you, I threw up just a tiny little bit of it. Probably mostly juice when I got to the bottom of the sediment, and then I said, okay, experiment time. I've got most of this in my system. I'd say definitely like 7/8 of it. I just left, I threw up like 1/8 of it, and then I left that bit of sediment at the bottom. And I knew that it's all mostly in me, so I felt at the time like I would have a hard time stomaching that last little bit of sediment. I could have, but I gave myself a break, and I wanted to, this especially because it was this important tarot ceremony, the psychedelic Quabala ceremony. I wanted to be able to just be there for that and not necessarily be throwing up the whole time. It's where my mind was going. It's where it took me. It's part of the story. When you're doing psychedelics, this is the kind of experimental, chaotic consciousness that you gotta embrace when you're dealing with ecstasy. I consider ecstasy to mean, in the Timothy Leary sense, stasis. Stasis being secure, predictable patterns and forms. Stasis. So when you're dealing with ecstasy, you gotta be ready for the chaos that can be applied. So, I drank my second bit of my potion, and it had the cannabis drink in it. I started off for the center of town in Campbellford. It takes about 20 minutes for me to walk from my dad's place to the center of this tiny little town in Campbellford. Campbellford's cottage country, folks, so it's not like a big town. Which part of the reason why I was kind of okay and kind of felt safe. If I was in the middle of Oshawa, I'm sure some people might have thought that I was on meth or something like that, and had, you know, asking me, "Are you okay?" People did at one point, as we're going to talk about. But in any case, started off from Dano's cottage, walking up the road. This is all stuff I'm not unfamiliar with. Walking and just, you know, basically I was just chilling, and I don't think I was listening to music. What I often do is I just have my notebook on me. My notebooks are all full of these cool psychedelic sprawlings of me walking. I've got a whole bunch of notes that I've typed up from this experience, which will eventually be in some kind of tome where I want to compile all these experiences. You'll see me writing stupid little things like, you know, like, I remember walking at one point and there was a house with a face that looked just like a cat. And then I was thinking about the fact that sometimes in life, like, so I've learned this especially since I've had a girlfriend. I was thinking about the fact that your intention doesn't always matter. What matters is the results of what you're doing. You could be doing something lying in bed and you're bugging somebody, and you could say, my intention is not to keep bothering you and waking you up. And she's lying beside you like, I don't give a damn about your intention. I've got to work tomorrow. I was thinking about that, and what I wrote down is, Cat House says, intentions don't matter, results are what matter. This is a lesson I need to keep learning in life. Just that whole moment like that, and then I just keep moving on and keep doing things, you know? All moments in a psychedelic experience combine to become the language of the universe in that moment. If you let it, if you have been training yourself to understand it in that way. So I'm walking around, just, you know, and at first I was fine. I had thought I had bundled myself up pretty good. I had like 3 pairs of socks on, like 2 pairs of pajama pants, a shirt, and then a sweater, and then my dad's coat thing, and I think I also had gloves. I'm up in Canada. There wasn't any snow on the ground or anything like that. But the experience started to... I started getting really high, and something was creeping under my ass the whole time that started to make me just like... started to be a part of the wildness of this experience, was that I started to get very cold. And I'm in the middle of this place, and I don't want to... I knew that I'm going to be high, and then I've just got to get the high part of this experience out. I mean, this was my intention, is to walk around, experience being really high, and I was going to go to... What I had in mind was to go to this gazebo, which is on the west side of the Trent River. And I started on the east side, had to go over this big bridge, go to the west side, and this is in the center of town. Everybody uses this bridge to get from the east to the west side of town. So it's a really important little fulcrum that I'm walking down, super fucked up on fucking drugs. I should say that, you know, this experience, like, I can do that kind of thing, because I didn't think I was going to get that high. And when I first went over the bridge, I really wasn't that high yet. But I was starting to get there. And for all those watching, I should say at this point that I'm talking about doing a lot of things that I've practiced doing for a long time. Even at this point, the tiger kind of got out of the cage a little bit. So it's important for me to give the caveat that if anybody was ever to do something like this, you should have some kind of trip sitter with you. I technically should have had a sitter with me on this experience. It's up to all of us to find our metabolic edge when it comes to taking these drugs and putting yourself by yourself into a situation. But it's everyone's their own liquor control board, as my dad used to say. So I'm not advocating that anybody do anything here. I advocate you be safe and do the best you can to be safe. And if you're going to explore doing things by yourself without a sitter, practice by going slow first before you play with the dimension that I'm talking about here. This was intermediate level psychedelic exploration. Thank you, my friend Clara. Yes, you should always have a sitter, really, because it helps to ground your sense of peace as well. It's a very important thing. My friend Clara has said hello to us from France, and thank you for chiming in, Clara. So, I am in the middle of the universe. I am the middle of the universe. And I'm in the middle of the universe on this fucking bridge. Going over the bridge. The bridge is cool. And this is like when I started to get paranoid. Classic psychedelic thing. I was starting to get really ramped up on the psychedelics. And that, like, it bothered me more on this trip because I realized that I was higher than I've ever been at a certain point. I went to this little gazebo across the bridge on the western part of the river. Came down, sat on this big, cool public gazebo thing. I wanted to go there because it's got flat ground and I could do my yoga there. Turns out that it's right beside this river. It's a very open area, and it was super windy. And as I was walking around, I went across this bridge. And before I even got to the gazebo, I started getting paranoid because, for whatever reason, I was paranoid at this point about this. Seeing a bunch of people around in trucks, like there's no policemen or anything like that, which was cool, but I was seeing lots of, like, this one guy was in this truck just idling on the side of the street, And I walked up, I saw the truck was there or whatever, you know, and I walked down the bridge, and then I looked back, and that truck drove and started kind of driving, like, you know, past me. And I'm going on the bridge, and I realized that I probably look like a homeless person or something like that. You know, I'm just dressed in like a coat I wouldn't usually wear. I think I don't remember what kind of pants I had on, but I think it was just like PJ pants. Like, I just didn't think about it. I was going for warmth over looks because I didn't think I was going to see anybody. I was all about the internal experience. But on this bridge, I realized that I probably look like a homeless person or like a drifter or something. And this guy in this truck just had me thinking, like, what if somebody just saw me and thought I was a girl or something because of my long hair or just anything? And I just started, like, I don't usually get tripped out about that kind of thing, but, like, I was just sparkled by that in this moment. So I'm kind of shuffling, and I go to the west side of the river. I sit on this gazebo, and it's freezing cold on the bottom of on the butt part of the gazebo, where I had my butt, rather. Wind coming in from all directions. And, you know, wind is like a chaotic thing for your chi field, they say. And I just felt paranoid. And I looked across the street, not the same truck, but there's a car just like hanging out there. And I'm just like, because of the cars all around and stuff, for some reason, it wasn't working. This spot on the gazebo was making me paranoid, and I was not going to be able to do my ceremony here. It was too windy for the cards too. That's another thing I was thinking about. So it's like, all right, fuck, this isn't gonna work. So as I got up, the first thing I thought of was, you know, I've been practicing quabbalistic magic, and I started thinking really deeply in terms of symbols. I started thinking that everything that happens is symbolic of the universal language of the universe speaking to me. And I felt like I'd be safer on the east side of the bridge, apparently on the east side of the river. So I'm now slightly even, this whole thing was just working weird on my brain, because this guy in this car over here, this is a different car, and it was just like hanging out. Somebody was hanging out there. They saw me go across the bridge, go to this gazebo, sit down, and then get up, and then go across the bridge again. I was thinking in my head, like, if anybody saw me doing this, they might just think that I'm a drifter, or that I'm a homeless person again, and that I got no place to go, and that they could come up to me and just ask, like, hey man, what do you got going on? What's up? You looking for a place to chill? And anything could happen. I was just too high. It was just the last thing that I wanted to deal with, if that was a thing. So I'm just kind of hoofing from wherever I'm going. But I'm going in between this sort of paranoia, but also, like, there is a knocking at the deepest part of my consciousness, at a transcendental place of, like, apathy, of not caring, and of kind of feeling like everything's happening for a reason, and I'm being guided by destiny in some way. And I got to thinking deeply that everything is just connected to this fated casuistry of cause and effect. And this cause and effect started to become full impulse. And eventually once I got across the bridge, I was on the east side of the river, and I was happy about that. And this is when the experience started to ramp up. And I started to hear myself laughing. And I started to just be in my natural psychedelic state, which is kind of laughing and being ecstatic. And once I got across the bridge on the east side, I got away. I'm closer to the river now, but on the east side, kind of away from the road, in this little place where, like, the river has a communal pump, and there's just a bunch of little tiny buildings and things, and there's like a bench and like a walkway that you could walk around. You walk beside the Trent River, and there's like black poles with chains that stop you from going into the river. So I'm hanging out beside this river on the east side, and I started to just get giddy and psychedelic. And, you know, when you're really in the depths of a psychedelic experience, like, I get laugh cry-ish. and I'm starting to you know, I just started to get like into this ecstatic space and just thinking of things that are funny and laughing. And at some point I started to feel something that kind of freaked me out in the deepest inclusion of this whole trip, is that I got lost in a loop that I almost call extreme confusion and what's the word? Like, I began to get into a lunatic state of like Alzheimer's, where I lost control of my mind, and I began to think about the fact that I think I blew it. Like, I think I gave myself too many drugs, and I think that I was going to be lost in this psychedelic headspace forever. So I'm in the middle of town, and I'm beside this river. I've got my bag, I got my lamp, and my notebook and my water bottles are in my bag, and my weed. On top of all this, I started to get very fucking cold. So the cold was making me feel like I couldn't get away from this experience at one level. And at another, like, my brain was telling me that, like, I can't go anywhere right now. I can't go back to Dano's because I started to get too high. Like, I needed to just find a place to just rest. And just kind of like, it's been a while since I've been at this place, but I wanted to just fucking lie somewhere where no one was looking at me and just like ecstatically just like fucking warm myself up from the cold and convulse and just let the fucking kundalini energy that was coming through me pass through me, just so I can get past this. And what I started to feel was that I'm fucking cold, and I'm like, what I started to experience is that I had died. Like, I had died, and I was now dreaming. And this is really the prime danger that I had in this experience. Since what was running on my brain, what I thought had happened is that I had died, like I had taken too many drugs or whatever, or something happened. I wasn't even thinking the causality. I was just sure that I had died. And that's just the experience that was running in my head, is that I'm dead because I can't get out of this very close and mean thought loop that I just kept putting myself through, which is just like a deep state of like transcendental ecstatic confusion, where I would keep thinking of what I should be doing right now, and I would get lost, just like, fuck, wasn't I just thinking about this? Like, like I'm thinking about, I've got to get up, I got to take all my things, and I've got to walk down the street. But what had happened, at some point, I kept getting into these thought loops, and I was hanging out beside the river, and I just love the ecstatic feeling of my body, especially on psychedelics. I'm grabbing onto this black chain, and like, I couldn't feel the river because it was way down there. But I'm just like, I didn't realize that what I was doing behaviorally. But some people came by, and I knew that I was fucked up because they approached me like a wild animal. And I'm kind of got one arm on this chain, and when the people said to me, "Are you okay?" that I started to realize like what I was doing. What I was doing is that I was hanging off the side of this river. My bag was here, and I'm hanging off the side of this river, laughing and cry laughing and yelling like ecstatically into the river. I fucked it up. Oh, I fucked it up this time. Oh, I fucked it, man. I fucked it. I'm fucked. And I started making this like, it's like when I have my deepest laugh, it's like, like, it's like an ecstatic, crazy, witchy laugh. And I started just like, I'm fucked. And I was doing this, hanging over this river, and someone comes and says, "You okay, man?" And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And it's a couple. It's a guy and a girl. And I can't see their faces or nothing. All I can just see is that they're just, like, kind of far from me, keeping their distance. And they're like, "You sure? You sure you're good?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And they're like, "Maybe you should get away from the river." And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Thank you. And I got off of hanging off of the river, grabbed my bag, and just went to this certain point on the river, and I just sort of let them walk off. And okay, so I guess I shouldn't be hanging off the river like that. Got it. That's going to make the bad people come and make bad things happen. Got it. Don't do that. And I experienced those people. I got away from them. And the howling Tao of my internal ecstasy was just like, half of me was just like situationally aware. And then the other half of me was like the howling Tao of just complete fucking nonsense, like a DMT flash of just like like ecstatic. Just I wanted to just fucking just blah, like laugh ecstatically and cry ecstatically and just look like a wild animal to these people. There's part of me that was just like ah! But the situational awareness in me was still there enough to fake being okay. They left me alone. I went into the middle. I went further along the river, and there's this little gully sidewalk thing. And so I'm hanging out on this little sidewalk. The sidewalk is leading to the river. And as I'm on this sidewalk, I realized how cold it was. I realized that I couldn't think of any place where this cold wouldn't exist. The wind wouldn't exist. And I started hanging out beside a random person's vehicle. I'm hanging out beside it. I'm lying on the ground. And I'm fucking like starting to just go into ecstatic convulsions of freezing. And then I'll go, and then I'd be like, what the fuck am I doing? And then I started thinking, I'm going to die here if I lie here. But then I would get up, lost in a state of confusion. And what happened at some point, I had a little lamp, and I was going to take this lamp and go down away from the public part of town that I was into some fucking darkness. So I would stop getting bothered by people so I could sit and not... Because right now, after those two people were there, I was in a survival mode. Like, I have to get out of here. And I don't know what the hell is going on at some level. But I guess I got to get out of here. At some point, though, I don't know why exactly I did this. There was some metaphorical thing in my brain, but I fucking had my little lamp, and it was my little lamp that I was going to take into the darker part so that I could see. It was my lamp of internal east, metaphorically, in my 2016 trip. I did the same thing. In the lamp, I put it in the east, and that was the eastern light for my Quabala banishing ritual ceremony. At some point, I was so fucking high that I was enraptured by the thought of the metaphor, and I threw my lamp in the river. So part of me was just like, fuck it, it doesn't even matter. It's from Canadian Tire, and it's a trivial part of this experience. Threw the lamp in the river, and then I was like, fuck, at some point I started to get my bearings together, and again, the situational awareness in me was like, I'm super ecstatic, but I need to find a safe place to be this ecstatic. And the situational awareness in me looked over top of things and said, I threw my lamp in the river. Now, I can't really go into the darkness without that lamp. I kind of fucked myself there, and part of me was thinking in my brain, leaking into the river, just like, this is a dream. I'm already dead. The reason that thought came up is because, okay, lamp's in the river, can't go get it. I can't go to my dad's place because I'm like kind of too high. I just need something right now. I just need to go into the darkness. But I threw my lamp in the river. I am freezing. Oh my God. So I just would go and lie down on the truck, beside this truck, and I kept going in this fucking mind loop for what seemed like eternity. I'm lying beside the truck, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die if I stay here. I need to get the lamp. I would get up. Oh fuck, I threw the lamp in the river. Oh my God, I'm so cold. And I would just like start running around in a circle just to try to stay warm. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing? I can't use the lamp. So I've just got to, what am I going to do? And so I would start walking more and walking past the part where the lamp was. But that took me a long time. It was the fact that I was getting up, seeing that the lamp was there, thinking about the fact that I can't jump in the river because that will make me even colder. I can't jump in the river. I can't jump in the river. This is because what was on my brain is that, you idiot, this is a dream. You've died. You can do anything. You can manifest all things because you are the infinite dreamer that has died and is just dreaming this stupid dream. So you can go into the fucking river and get the lamp and then stop being an idiot and go. And I would go to the river and I would be like, and I would see myself jumping in and getting it. And I was dreaming it. And if this is a dream and this image in my head is a dream, like, why don't, it's right there. Situational awareness. I might be dreaming. If I'm not dreaming, I can jump into that river and get that thing. It's no big deal. But occasionally, and it was only happened once I finally, there was a period again where I would go to the truck, lie down, and be like, oh my God, I can't do this because I'm going to die of cold. I've got to get the lamp and do something. I go over and I realize the lamp is in the river. I'm like, oh my God, this is just keeps fucking happening. I'm never going to fucking get out of here. I'm dead. And I was sure that I had just fucking died, and I was in this infinite thought loop. And I wanted to jump in the river and just get the lamp because it was a dream. But what I ended up doing instead is I went, at one point, the second or third time, I went beside this random truck. I lied beside it. I went into the fetal position, and I squeezed myself, and I just tried to make myself warm again as I'm lying there. Now, this is the next thing that came to my mind. Is the lamp is in the river. I'm going to die here. I'm already dead, and since I'm already dead, all I know is that I'm having a terrible experience. I can get up, and I looked over, and this random person's truck is here. I opened the door of the truck, and I was literally just going to crawl in just to stay warm. And I opened the door of this random truck, and it was open. And I stopped myself, closed it, lied on the ground again, and I started dreaming about driving this fucking truck to Mexico, or driving it to my dad's house, or driving it into the river. It was just all these thoughts were in my head, and I was dreaming them, and I couldn't tell the difference between this dream and the dreams I was dreaming. I'm lying beside this truck, and I'm breathing, and I'm letting the energy, making sure I'm feeling it coming from the top to the bottom, and I'm having this deep internalized white saucer in my eyes, some transcendental vision of life beyond this moment, life beyond death, life beyond my own life. And at some point, you know, as I was doing all this, I was experiencing this death thing, and I kept saying, it's okay that I've died. I'm letting it go. It was very difficult, but the cold, and I was lying there and letting all these thoughts come of like, I want to get out of this experience. But I let it go. I didn't act on it. And thankfully, as I was lying down in this fetal position, thinking about this transcendental space, what my brain kept saying is, I am in this transcendental space of being dead, but I'm still breathing. And if I'm still breathing, that means that time is going by. And if time is going by, then that means that I might not be in this moment forever. I might actually just be on those drugs. I might actually come out of this, and if I drove this car somewhere, or if I jumped in the river, I would be too cold to do my ceremony. My dad would be pissed, my parents would be pissed, and everyone would just have a bad experience. I don't think that's the case, because I'm pretty sure I'm fucking dead and that I can do anything right now. But since I'm breathing, there is still rhythm. I am this infinite deadness. But I could also hold my energy of my body on earth. It is there. And if I go and do something stupid on my physical front, I won't be able to come back to this transcendental space. I'm still breathing. The womb of time is still a part of me. So I can't get into this car. Lying on the ground. I'm still breathing. I shouldn't do anything stupid. So what can I do? I lied here, and after this experience, this was the heights of the best part of some deep cleaning that I did in this experience. I was lying on the ground, shivering, freezing, kind of dying. And I kept telling myself in my head, as I was in this space, that I can breathe, and I can die. I can even be here, be dead. I have enough warm clothes on, like I feel like I'm dying, but right now, I started to recognize that this was the intensity of my experience that I was having. But what was on my head is that I was dead. I was dreaming. Now, I don't want to do anything stupid, but I want to make this dream actually make sense and make it be the most, at least comfortable enough to do my ceremony. Because whether it's in a dream or whether it's in reality, my consciousness will still be experiencing it. Which means that I can't do anything stupid. I can't jump in that river. And I can't jump into this random dude's car. What I need to do right now is to breathe until my brain gets a little bit of sense. And I just breathed, and I let the experience of death, it's like my stomach was completely watching the fact that I thought that I was dead and that I was dying and that the cold was going to kill me. And there came to a point where I accepted it. I accepted it and just said, you know what? Fuck it. If I'm going to die of freezing here, I know it's the right thing to do. It's the yogic thing to do. The yogic thing to do is not to react on the reflex to jump in that river or to get in that car to try to stay warm. It's to have sense, to have control of this ecstatic experience. I just lied on the ground until the howling Tao came through me, for the most part. And then I came to a point where I just basically thought that I'm cold enough that if I start running, like I must have been on the ground breathing through that death experience for quite a bit. Between you and I, that was some of the most fruitful parts of this experience. I can't fully explain why. All I can tell you is that I was abiding in the space of death and physical karma at the same time without letting either eclipse each other. So, this transcendental duality experience I held on to when I eventually took it into my ceremony, where I had been practicing the quabbalistic cross and all of these magic ceremonial things. I've been practicing Kriya yoga. And what I envisioned is that the white expanse of absolute timeless pure awareness death energy that I was in the midst of, where I had to let everything go. I let go of my desire to stay alive, my desire to be warm. There were points where I just realized that this was it. I'm here forever. I broke my brain, and now all I can do is subsist with opening my heart in this space. And that's all I can do. And I resonated and opened my heart, And I realized that I was still a body on the ground. And I said in my brain constantly, I connected the Ata of the quabbalistic cross of East, of Kether, of the Holy Father. I connected that transcendental ecstasy with my responsibility to Malkuth, to the material world, and to the experiences that I have responsibilities towards. And I saw in that moment that neither was eclipsing the other. And I knew that as soon as I came out of the experience, Malkuth was all I was going to know. But right now, the door was open to channel Kether through Malkuth. So I breathed there and just abided in that space, opening my heart to the fact that I thought I was dead. But whatever was happening here in this painful transitional state is okay. I stayed there for a long time, intoning the quabbalistic cross, and even facing east sometimes. I knew where east was. I would lie there and I would just say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I see it, I feel it, I am it. And I was just doing the lesser banishing ritual in a way internally, and feeling my kundalini energy coming through me. Channeling all that in a time where I had no consciousness of anybody outside me. I had basically died to the physical world. And it was this that allowed me now, when I'm talking in regular reality, I'm learning to channel that transcendental Kether experience while I'm abiding in Malkuth. At that moment, I tried to make that last as long as I possibly could. I burned my devotional energy at a deep survival first chakra level into this concentration of the internal meditation that I was putting myself through. And then eventually I started to think in my head, you know, I think if I start running, I might warm myself up a little bit. And then I thought in my head, there is another little gazebo here on the east side of town. Just after you get off the bridge, there's a four corners. And there's another, it's not a gazebo, but it's a little space. Flat, where I could do yoga and do shavasana without being bothered. And I could chill there, smoke my weed, regroup, and see where I'm at. Seemed to be the only possible thing to do in that moment, instead of me dying here. So I'm going to get up, breathe in, and I just started running, shaking myself out of the energy, getting myself out of that coldness, and running, and I'm in shape. I'm a good runner, and you know, I kind of just ecstatically got to that central square. And as soon as I got to the central square, I started coming out of the infinite. What I wrote down in my notebook at that point is, oh my God, thank God it's all finally finite again. Oh my God, I didn't die. I'm so glad and I'm so thankful to be in the world. I'm so thankful to have slow material responsibilities that I can just chuck away at slowly, piece by piece, without having to endure the intensity of the internal energy that I had just experienced. It's all coming back. It's slowing down. Thank God. Thank God. It sounds like a painful experience, but of course, as a psychedelic person looking back, I'm glad that I have had that experience. It gives you a humble, earnest appreciation for everything that happens in every moment. So I came to the center of town, smoked some weed, came back to some sense of center, and it was at this point that I wanted to do my ceremony here. But it was still cold. Still too cold at this space. And I still didn't feel fully safe. Somebody, I mean, not even safe, but like somebody might come along and not necessarily want to harm me, but just to bug me at a regular human level while I was trying to go internally into my own fucking trip. One guy came from across the bridge and walked down to an alleyway that was beside me in the same little plaza. He's like, hey dude, how's it going? And I was like, good. And I'm still super fucking high. And he's like, yeah, good. You from around here? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay. And then he kept on walking. And I was just like, that tripped me out. I don't want to keep dealing with just all the ramifications of that kind of thing while it's like now probably 1 or 2 in the morning at this point. I'd say probably 1:30 in the morning. It's about 10, 11, 12, 1, 4.5 hours into taking my dose. Pretty much. So really, because I had drank a liquid, liquids go through your system faster. I think I was coming down from the peakest of the peaks at about 1:30 in the morning after having drank it at 9:30. It's 4 hours, which is interesting. Maybe the cold was part of the peak experience that I had. I'm not really sure. But I'm in this little town square at 1:30 in the morning. And I started thinking about the fact that I didn't feel good about this place. It was like, didn't have good chi flow because it was the center of town, 4 roads, constant cars coming through and being distracting. It was like wind, channels of wind, and it was actually literally windy. So I'm hanging out at this town square, and what I was thinking about the fact is that Campbellford is full of lots of great old Gothic cathedrals and churches, and you know, you can have whatever consciousness you like about it, but I tend to think that churches are arbitrated by people who do have positive intentions in their minds. There's lots about the Christian heritage that has done a lot more bad than good. I don't know the history of the particular church that I went to, but it faced east. It was high on a neat little hill, and it had, like, I'll explain this tree. It was this beautiful tree that hung over it, so it was east, and then to the west was just a complete drop in a hill that led to a road on the ground. I felt a special resonance from this place. I felt protected, and I found it because basically I knew that there were churches around, like I said. So I just went to the middle of the road, and I'm all fucking high, and I'm looking over, and I noticed that there's a steeple. It's probably about like 4 minutes that way, and I kind of just like, all right, smoked some weed, got all my shit, and I ran. This is my first time smoking weed after the whole experience, and kind of grounded me a bit, although cannabis is its own thing. It's an old ally of mine. Old velvet chair. So, I went looked down the street, and I saw a way down there that I could go to this cathedral with this steeple. Went down there, I'm all super fucking high. I'm seeing different people and stuff like that, but now I'm feeling like I'm getting away from public, getting away from main roads. Finally reached this church, and I'm looking up. It's east. I get to the top of it. There's a sweet little spot for me to do my ceremony. Flat ground, right out the front of this thing. Big space. And then to the west is like an overhang that goes downward towards earth, which is kind of spiritual, reflective in some ways. The church was on a hill. East was coming down to me in the west. And also to the west was this big, beautiful tree. It's a beautiful, gorgeous tree whose roots were, it was directly on this hill. So you could see the outpouring of its roots. And it looked like a pussy. When you went to the naked face of this hill, this tree had like 2 or 3 beautiful vagina-like tree trunks coming out of it. Very feminine mysticism type of consciousness coming from the way these roots divided in this way, and very symbolic for me. I actually thanked this tree, and I shared Qigong energy with this tree. The whole space felt sacred to me, and it's burned in my metamorphic field as a sacred place where I met divinity. And this tree was a part of that divinity. Felt fated that it was there. I don't know if the people who made that church were into the same consciousness that I am, but it just is an amazing miracle that I was incarnated into a life where at 30 years old I would do this intense ceremony, and find a church with the layout that this one had. It felt faded. Again, not the church itself, but the front place. I was there, finally, I'm all fucked up, and it was then that I embarked on my psychedelic Quabala Kriya yoga ceremony. We're going to talk about it as soon as we come back from these messages. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Feel free to say any questions or comments. I'm going to come back and really I've talked about the most fun part of this trip. I think the last little bit I'm just going to talk about its implications, what I did, what it was all about. And then we'll probably wrap her up for today, folks. First, I'm going to go to the bathroom. See you guys in just a moment. I see my friend Jamie in the chat here. I appreciate you, Jamie. Jamie's saying, I'll buy you another lamp, man. You're smarter than jumping in there. Thankfully, Jamie, you are correct. I did intuit not to jump in the river. Although I was in some heck of an experience there. That was definitely the highest I've ever been. The most ecstatic I've ever been. Definitely a crazy experience. So, folks, this has been at least the psychedelic dimension of this trip. And the implications of it are great. I am really somebody who is interested, especially in personally enduring the psychedelic crucible of absolute transcendental death, accepting that at a deep level, breathing through it, and then embarking on ceremonial self-realization experiments. I was still very high when I finally sat down in front of the church. And a deep part of the whole experience of playing with these cards is that you become very open to suggestion after a psychedelic experience like that. This is actually an important point that I want to make it in this moment. Being that high on psychedelics, sorry, let me just get a good honk on this for a second. It's a roach, and I'm trying to get the last of it. Whoop, yep. That'll do. Thanks for your patience. A huge part of the experience that I had here was connecting while I was in the throes of the psychedelic experience. The ecstasy I felt as being some primary libidinal energy of survival in some ways. And I inverted a deep primal survival energy by letting it go, realizing that I could die, I could freeze, anything could happen. Someone could come along and actually see me, and I could be in danger of a police officer seeing me on the ground and having to talk to him while I'm all fucked up. I accepted that in that moment and just let it all fly. I released a deep place of tension in my gut, and I just breathed and just let it be in that moment. There's a part of me that, again, the situational awareness in me was like a bird watching over me and thinking like, I see what's going on here and I'm ready to talk to a fucking cop if I have to right now and just fake it, and that'll pull me out of this experience. And but at the same time, at some level, like I was there, and I could, again, it was the fact that I was visualizing the Quabala light of Divine Father and of Kether in that moment, transmitting it through Malkut, seeing it all as one through my heart. What happened is that in that state of psychedelic, extreme magnification of mind through the Syrian Rue and the mushrooms and everything, I could feel survival instincts unraveling themselves inside of, and I was overlooking it. I could see my own survival instincts operating, and I was detached from it. It was an objective experience, and I saw it, and I did not identify with it, because my deepest place of awareness, as I was pushing myself to understand it, was the libidinal flashes of pure energy awareness that was coming from my crown chakra. This is what I was visualizing, and that there was this divine light beyond emotional reaction and reflex. And because I was feeling like I was abiding in that place, I accepted whatever happened on the material front, and I feel like I released a subtle psychosomatic tension and a clenching that I was doing in my lower chakras, my first chakra. Through the books I'd been reading, I'd been learning that in a certain book called Kundalini by Robert Svedova, talks about how you can't really enter any of the chakras. You really can't have an awakened heart chakra or anything per se until you go door by door up the chakras. And it was in this moment that I could feel my whole system kind of lighting up and aligning in a way, because I had let go of the clenching at a deep survival level because of the nature of the ecstasy that was coming through me. And I sat with it. I didn't try to get away from it. I accepted it, and I sat with it and meditated while I was convulsing and freezing and laughing a little bit and also crying and letting these things come through, seeing it all like Kup Sadhana, clouds going across the essential sun of the transcendental self that I was experiencing. And I connected that all. The deep libidinal essence of myself, I visualized that as being the same light that I was going to see at the top card at the position of Kether in the tarot ceremony that I was finally going to do when I got to this church. I connected it all. And the more important point here is the letting go of grosser chakra field contractions at the neurocerebral spinal level. I felt like I purged them and cleansed them by having an experience that was absolutely felt like life or death to me. Let it all go, experienced it at its pure state, and I feel like I let go of a lot of stuff in my chakras. A lot of clenching and unconscious clenching So I'm sitting now in front of this church, and I'm like, I had been fasting all this time too. I've got nothing slowing me down. I've, you know, after all this, you know, I was doing even a bit of yoga, stretching at the little four corners of town underneath that little veranda thing I was talking about where that guy came through. I had been stretching and warming up, and I kind of ran to the church, and I'm stretching, and at this point, because I was high up on the hill of this church, the wind was completely absent. I could just sit there, and I wasn't freezing. I was all bundled up in all my clothes, and I'd found my grace spot. I was no longer cold. Sitting up, my body isn't clenching anymore. My back is actually warm from all the running, and even just at this point where I was, the night had gotten warmer. Somehow, it all worked out. It's probably because I had gotten away from the river. Probably why I was less cold. Note to self for later. God damn it. I'll probably always go to this church now whenever I do an experience like this anyway, but in any case, I'm at this church. I'm all warmed up. My legs are crossed. And I embarked on my ceremony. And throughout the whole ceremony, everything that involved East, everything that involved Kether, everything that involved Divine Father, Paramatma, I connected it all with the libidinal essence of myself that was trying to permeate romantically by reaching its hand out into my earth experience. Having faith that the universe was conspiring for me to have this experience and to have every experience that I ever have. Because it's all me at the center of the universe. Just like we do in the quabbalistic cross. Now, of course, this is how my ceremony went. For all those who are interested and who are watching, this is when I'm going to be building this up into my own thing eventually. This is how it went. I sat, and at first I did the Quabala cross, standing up, imagining I was standing on the earth. My head was touching the center of the Milky Way galaxy and beyond all time, connecting me in my identity at once with libidinal, pure awareness energy of Shiva, of Atma, of the Father. And at the same time, identifying in a tantric fashion with Malkut, the ground, the earth, the body, which was being used as a vessel for the will of that Father. I kept this grounded the whole time. And first I did the Quabala cross. Then I did the lesser banishing ritual of the Pentagram. And that is a very special ceremony for anybody who has ever heard of it or who is interested in it. Very interesting and important esoteric ceremony. You face east. You imagine that east in a way is Kether. And what you do is you use your wand, which I use as my fingers. You create a pentagram with your fingers, and then you put the wand through the pentagram while facing east, and you'll say a certain key code that relates with the mystical symbolism of east. You would say Yod He Vav He, and that's Y-H, V or W-H. It's Yahweh, I am, pure libidinal essence. Then you would turn and you would face south. You would do your pentagram. You put the wand through the center while intoning and actually saying Adonai. Relates to the fire and what the essence of fire is. The sun, the Atma. Each one of these has a different meaning that you kind of ingrain in your experience every time you do the banishing ritual of the pentagram. So you can see the typical neural reactions to anything, and you can abide within the given possible forms as the formless. So then you face west. After doing south, you face west. Orange and blue emotions. You do the pentagram, and you intone Ahaya, I believe is, yes, it'd be Ahaya. It's another mystical symbolism. Then you would face north, do your pentagram, you intone Agila. Then you come back, and you are imagining colors for each one. And finally, at this part of the ceremony, you intone before me, Raphael, behind me, Gabriel, at my right hand, Archangel Michael, at my left hand, Ariel. These are the 4 energetic dimensions of expression, and we are all of them, and they are all us. We are the formless in essence, but we also express ourselves through these given karmic alchemies. So we say, before me, these archangels, which are a part of our own consciousness. You're activating them by calling them angels, identifying them as being parts of ourselves in our own metaphysical energy field. For all around me flames the pentagram, and in the middle of the column shines the 6-rayed star. And that is the 6 of the tropical horoscope, and the chakras finding their equilibrium and the redintegration of matter, as Aleister Crowley would call it, through an organic unfoldment through the laws of nature and the 4 directions. And after the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, we finish one more time with the Quabbalistic cross. Sorry, that was my phone. And this is what I did in front of this church while I was super high. The whole time, me thinking of East as being this benevolent but yet difficult Holy Father figure. That's how I kind of say it, is East is kind of benevolent yet difficult. South is our own energy. It's benevolent, but it's got an enjoyable expression, and that's why it's Rajasic, and we've got to kind of rein it in. Really the same thing with the West. The West is necessary karma and emotional energy. That's how it's expressed in Quabala. And then the North, however you want to say it, is a difficult energy, but will produce benefic things if you practice exploring that difficult energy of the North, Capricorn, Saturn. And I do correlate them, the cardinal directions, in ways to these. Aries in the East, Cancer in the South, Libra in the West, Capricorn in the North. And when I do my Kabbalah Tarot ceremony, it reflects on the directions through astrology in this way too. So it would be a lot to unfold exactly what I do with the Kabbalah ceremony. Essentially, after I've done the banishing ritual, I would do one more Kabbalistic cross, and then I unfold my cards. And what I use is I don't have them on me here, I guess, but I use the Hermetic Tarot deck, the one that's black and white. It's that black and white deck that is made from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. I took all my cards, shuffled them, embraced them, kissed them, put them on my Ajna chakra, intoned that they are, in this moment, the arbiter of that Holy Father Cather in the East, who is trying to crack through me and get in touch with the princess inside myself, the princess of discs, that is inside of all of us, reaching and enduring to be embraced by the infinite light of Kether through the Fool of mysticism. I intoned all of this, put it into the tarot cards, and then did my tarot ceremony. And what I did is, this is how I did in 2016 as well. Put a circle of the cards around myself with no links, no breakages in the continuity of the circle. I sat and I picked cards based on their planetary direction in astrology according to the rulership of the planet in its Sephirah. So each Sephiroth of the Quabbalistic tree of life is said to be governed by a planetary energy. So I picked the cards in directions that matched the cardinal energy of astrology relating to that planet's sign. I'm going to explain that a little bit better as we go along. So we started off at Kether, and Kether doesn't have any planetary resonance. Some people say it's Pluto or Uranus. Hello, Strawberry, my dear. Nice to have you here. And also thank you to Brutus for your wonderful comment. Don't think we are normally aware of time's primary human experience as well as assumptions we make about the universe based on that. Awesome, Brutus. So thanks again for everybody for watching. So, thank you, Strawberry. Started at Kether, and Kether I just picked East, which is right in front of me. Bang. Eastern card, put it at the top, face down. Could be upside down. It could be reverse. I use reverse tarot. If it's reverse, it can still be either... I consider reverse and forward to be both either benefic or malefic. Benefic means it's facing Kether, it's an upside up, and whatever is expressed in the card comes naturally with ease. And that's an easier time dealing with the given karma, but with ease comes the responsibility of using it correctly, or else you could waste it. When a card is upside down, the card is pointing towards Malkuth, which means that there will be more obstruction, more difficulty and resistance in experiencing fully the expression of what that card is. But with that resistance and difficulty comes the full integration of what that card is. It can be either way. No matter what, as I always say, your experience is going to be what it is. These cards are here to help give us some symbolic resonance as to what we might be experiencing, to understand it with lightness, because that is important when you're dealing with this kind of divination mysticism. So, picked a card from the East, one card, put it on my forehead, always trying to think about the center of the Milky Way universe while I do it, put one card face down at Kether. I don't have any map. I just, I've got my notebook beside me. Kether at the top, and then you've got Chokmah, and then you've got Binah, and then you've got the next one. Can't think of it right now. Well, you'll see where I'm at. The three at the top, and then the next two, and then Tiferet, and then the next two, and then Yesod, and then Malkuth. So, yeah, I started pulling the cards from all these different places. The second Sephiroth, I believe I think that I took the second one from the East also. It wasn't until I got to Binah, which is ruled by Saturn, that I took the cards from an astrological directional resonance. So for Kether, I just picked from the East, put it there. The number 2 placement, I believe I just took another card, swooshed them around, took it from the east of the circle around me, right? Took it from the east, put it at the Chokmah place. I believe Chokmah is the second Sephiroth. The third is Binah, relating with Saturn, some kind of difficult part of the experience that you're bound to be having. And with the Saturn resonance at Binah, I used the Vedic astrology understanding of directions. Capricorn and Aquarius are north. So I'm facing east. In order to pick the Capricorn card, I pick from the north, which is going to be to the left of east, if you're facing east, right? So picked my Capricorn card, put it face down on the left. Cardinal sign always on the left is pretty much how I did it. And then I rearranged my cards again, sat in tone, picked another card from the north, resonating with Saturn and Binah, put it to the right of the Capricorn card, and that was my Aquarius card. So I've got two cards at the position of Binah. From here, I had started going with this astrological resonance that I did last time. After whatever is after Binah, I can't think of the darn thing right now, and it's bugging me. But it is a placement that is considered to be ruled by Jupiter. Chesed, that's what it is. Chesed, mercy, Jupiter. And each of these Sephiroth have their own resonance. Chesed typically is a place of mercy in the experience that you're having on Earth at that Sephiroth. So the cards that you pull are going to be showing, as an example, things that are going to be opportunities for added grace in the challenges that you face at Kether, Chokmah, and Binah. So when it came time to pull the Chesed cards, Chesed resonates with Jupiter. Jupiter is ruled by Sagittarius and Pisces. In the Vedic understanding of the mystical directions, we know that Aquarius is north, Capricorn is north also. So Pisces is northeast, and then Aries and Taurus is east, right? So Pisces is northeast, and Sagittarius is southeast, is northwest, right? Libra and Scorpio are west, Sagittarius is northwest, and Capricorn and Aquarius are north. So within my circle, I picked a card at southwest for Sagittarius, the Mula Tricona of Jupiter. I put that on the left position at Chesed on my Quabala tree. And then I picked a card from Pisces, which I connected my circle again. Picked a card from the northeast, which is with this position of Pisces. Picked it up, and that would be the feminine reflexive side of the karma that I would expect to experience at the Chesed point. Put the card down. So now I've got two cards at Chesed. Then I would take another two cards for Gebura. Gebura is Mars. It's a position of opportunity, but also necessary things that you have to abide by in the given tarot ceremony. Mars is ruled by Aries and Scorpio. So I pulled one card from the east for Aries, and then I pulled one card from the west for Scorpio. Put them at Gebra. I went this is how I did it, all the way down until, the bottom is the final, of the ninth is Yesod. Yesod is ruled by the moon. It's the ninth Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. The moon is ruled by Cancer, so I pulled one card from Cancer and put it at the moon position at Yesod. And then finally for Malkuth, how did I do it for Malkuth? I don't remember what I did for Malkuth. I'd have to check my notes, because Malkuth isn't ruled by a planet, it's ruled by Earth. So I might have just picked, I think I only picked one. I might have just picked one from the east for auspiciousness sake. I'd have to get back to you guys on that. But this is the nature of how my tarot ceremony unfolded. I flipped them all up. And, you know, at this point, like, so at this point, my dad was supposed to be going to work. And my dad works where I actually live, around Oshawa. I was up at his cottage, and he lives at his cottage, but he works where I live. So it's a Monday. I had stayed up all night, and I think it was now Tuesday morning, and it was like 4 a.m. like when I was finally, it was 3 to 4 a.m. when I finally did the ceremony. And I did the whole ceremony. Didn't think about the fact that I had to go to my dad's. I was, and I had to rock and roll. But there was no tension in my stomach about it because of the same experience that I had had lying beside the truck. Everything is okay. Everything's unfolding as it should. I don't need to get all in a tither about anything that's happened in this experience because it'll ruin my ability to abide in the transcendental light amidst the chaos of the material world. I'm still here. 4 in the morning, whatever it was, I finally completed it with patience, with due diligence. You know, I forgot a big important part of this story, which is that before I did the ceremony, I also did some Kriya yoga. I'm sad that I didn't mention that because that was a big part of this story. Before I actually did the tarot ceremony, a huge part of my experience is that I listened to a guided Kriya yoga meditation by Ryan Kirksack. Super high on all these drugs still. I'm sitting in, like, I was so clear when I was doing the alternate breathing, meditating and focusing on the meditation practices that he gives in the instructions of this guided meditation. And for those interested, you know, I don't think psychedelic drugs are necessarily something you want to lean on in order to have an experience of the divine, but I think that psychedelics are like a neurological dumbbell. If you put a backpack on with 20 pounds and you go run up a mountain, you are gaining more muscle and more endurance because of that extra added 20 pounds. It's the same thing when you do psychedelics and you do a ceremony like this. You're in a state of ecstasy, but if you can channel yourself under a state of neurogenetic elasticity, then you can channel energy through anything. And especially since I had done all this purging, my mind was actually as clear as ever. I felt like a genius in that moment. And then I did my Kriya yoga meditation sequence. Essentially, again, I don't want to give it too much away because I'm not actually an officiate of this just yet. I'm going to be going to Ryan Kirksack's Kriya yoga apprenticeship in order to be able to be an official teacher of these practices. But if you're interested, the practices are there and you can get them through Ryan Kirksack. And what it is one part of it is that you visualize intoning energy to come from the bottom chakra. You invite it up to the third chakra. You clench your perineum and you intone Om, 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 Om up to the third chakra, and then you release the perineum and you release it all, you let it go. You do a few of those, and then you do a visualization experience where you do some Shumna breathing, cold current coming up the spine, up to the top of the head, and you envision the chakra, the crown chakra, as well as the Sahasrara chakra that goes even beyond. And I did all of these Kriya yoga meditation instructions while intoning and thinking about the divine light that I'd seen in all the other experiences. They all came together as this Kether, as this divine father libidinal energy. And so the Kriya yoga was a huge part of this experience. I did my ceremony. I unfolded the whole Quabala tree of life with the cards around me, packed my cards up, smoked one last joint. I did it. Flip the cards slowly, nice and slowly. Digest each one intuitively in each moment. Kather, Chokma, 2 cards of Binah. Flip them all the way down, slowly enjoying each piece. I won't be late. Dano won't, because I was watching the time, so I knew that I was kind of going to get there right on time, but that's what I was aiming for. A true magician is never late. He gets right when he intended to get there, as the great Gandalf says. Unfolded all the cards, and then I took pictures of them on my phone. And as well, I wrote them in my notebook. Kather position, this card and this card. Chokma position, this card and this card. Just in case I lost my phone. I got them. The universe spoke to me in this moment. It all came to this. Got down the data. Closed my book. Packed up my cards. Smoked one last delicious joint. And then walked from the church back to my dad's place with a little bit of a run so I could actually stay warm. And now I have that whole experience. All the notes leading up to it, all the cards, all the symbols of meaning, the journalistic experience of a psychedelic experience that's good for anybody to do. And I connected it all the symbols, all the symbolism, to a concentrated effort on a mantric ceremony that burned these esoteric symbols like a ritualistically into my consciousness, so that I can start to at least look for the universal, the language of the universe, giving me omens through these particular symbols that I have come to use in my own brand of mysticism. It all relates to esotericism and to anciently given cultural symbols of astrology, as well as the mysticism of Quabala, which all flows together once you experience them through the shared transcendental visage that I have. And this is what I'm kind of trying to show people. This is an experience that invites you to reach your hand out to the infinite mystic and to get in touch with your own Neptune, with your own faith that there's more going on in this material world than the material dimension of our experience. This is how I did it. This is, for me, I'm engaged with the language of the cards that I unfolded in this tarot ceremony. And I seem to see a language in it. So I hope you guys can see the meaning of all of this, combining the psychedelic experience with this kind of ritualistic symbol unveiling, and combining it all with Kundalini meditation and Kriya yoga meditation in particular, where we visualize and identify with the root of ourselves, which goes beyond all astrological casings and even goes beyond the phenomenal casings of the karma that we see written in these cards. The form is there in order for our formless, infinite power to get a grasp on it. That's why it's important to combine all these different understandings, to see yourself as the center of it all, but also to respect and recognize the form of Divine Mother, whose womb and whose earth material implies another level of responsibility that we have to also respect. Constantly bringing these two together so that we can apply our will purely while still holding respect for the pace that it takes for material things to develop harmoniously amongst us and other people. So that was cool. That was definitely a deep one. Like I said, you know, the deepest depths of the psychedelic experience will be good for anybody just to play with. As long as you take it, just like any mysticism, just like any practice with ecstasy, it's important to also have a scientific mind, skepticism, a respect for due process, and the patience, like any good student, to do what the teacher says and start slow. I didn't embark on any of these things without a respect for what the kind of experience these all imply. Not just with psychedelics, but also with Kriya yoga, with any sort of yoga, any sort of meditation. You have to have a respect for the pace that your consciousness can possibly deal with it through. And I think that, you know, combining these sorts of things together in the way that I do is something that I'm interested in doing a lot. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this. Let me know in the comments if you have any favorite ways of invoking the same ecstatic consciousness of self in safe, scientifically grounded ways, so that you can experience the liquid acid of pure awareness without dissolving the container of the ego that holds it. A powerful acid is a very strong thing, as long as it doesn't burn a hole into the center of the earth. See a few people are doing some comments. It's cool to see that we've got a few fellow people interested in the psychedelic experience. Buddy Brutus has recommended a book, Meditations on the Tarot, A Journey into Christian Hermeticism. That sounds very interesting, Brutus. That is really a lot of everything that I talked about in this ceremony resonates with that. I'm glad to see. You know, Jamie, if you ever want to throw me anything, pal, I'm always down to try whatever you give me. You're mentioning you've got some Archangel Michael divination cards, and that's interesting, although I generally stick to the cards that I do like, and these Hermetic Tarot cards have a certain symbolism that I guess you could say I've grown attached to it. It's where all of my esoteric research leads me in terms of a tarot deck that works for me, especially because it's of the astrological resonances. So I'm always down for seeing and trying different things, but I will give that caveat. Ron Gladden is asking if I ever do individual tarot readings. I wonder if you mean if I offer them. Not yet, and probably not for a long time. For me, I'm not a small game tarot guy. I'm too Sagittarius about it. Karma's going to be what it is. No need to look in the cards. But I do this practice as a ceremonial genuflection to this infinite spirit. I'll invoke the cards once every 5 years during a deep psychedelic experience, and then I'll do tarot once in a while. But it's for me, it's a long-standing, deep neuro-programming experience of divinity that I only do once in a while, if I get the chance. Wild Child is saying that I guess you enjoyed my experience, and you're saying you'd like to re-experience it in a safer way as an adult. Oh, sorry, not my apologies, of course. I thought you were talking about mine. You're saying that you had a psychedelic experience when you were 15, and it was interesting, and you'd like to re-experience it in a safer way as an adult. You know, one of the reasons that I talk about this stuff that I do is because I'm trying to give people this idea, you know, spreading the seeds of psychedelics being possibly tools of consciousness that can be applied artfully and constructively in human consciousness towards very benefic ends, as long as it's done with the right consciousness And especially as long as everybody, like if it was legal, then people could start making positive, constructive, scientific, practical platforms for how to use them. And only when people start to think about that they could be that, will we get there. So I hope that makes sense, you know, kind of a messenger for something I'd like to think is important. So folks, thank you, Brutus. I'm glad you enjoyed it. For everybody watching, if you have any other questions, feel free to throw me more in the comments, or if you like, we can take a moment and this will be my informal question and answer period. I'm down to hang out for just a little bit, see if anybody has any other questions. It's been a long afternoon, so if you guys feel want to say the peace fingers and call it a day, let me know. I'll just give a moment for anybody who's got any sort of questions or comments. If you want to just tell me it was an interesting story, feel free to rock and roll. Probably gonna roll another joint at some point. Smoking weed with you guys was kind of nice too. Just nice to smoke a joint and kind of chill out on a live stream like this, which is very nice. I think that I was very inspired by our meditation today. I might start doing that on How to Rock Spirit. I don't try to... iRise, you've asked a question about Venus retrograde right now. It's okay, iRise. Today's session was more about this Quabala experience that I've just had. You've asked a question about Venus is transiting your 8th house right now and it's retrograde. I usually won't answer questions like that because I haven't prepared anything for it, that's all. Usually I'll be trying to stick to questions as per the nature of what I talked about today. Or just about me in general, if anybody wants to shoot the shit. But for now though, folks, it has been a long day. It looks like everybody's all groovy. So thank you very much, folks, for watching. For all those who got in late, you can check out this video in its entirety. I'm probably going to split it up on How to Rock Spirit and stuff like that. Brutus, you gave this comment earlier, and I think I might have spoken to it, but I didn't say which comment was great. It's okay, iRise. Brutus said that my phrase, the womb of time, was very cogent. We're not all that aware of time, and that's a great psychedelic point. When I was in the depths of this thing, it's hard to see time in context, and I felt like I did. And how we see time does change our assumptions that we make about the universe and our involvement in it. It's a great point. So folks, thanks for watching. I'm Dustin Cormier. I'm going to split this up, and you guys might see it on How to Rock Spirit. How to Rock Spirit is my other spiritual podcast channel. If you're not already subscribed there, eventually I'm going to start doing stuff like that more regularly and chipping away at that channel. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again on the next stuff that comes out. Keep an eye out on Christmas. I'm going to be having a long video talking about everything I learned at Asheville Vedic Astrology, and you might enjoy that. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for being a part of this live stream. I've got about 7 people who are watching it right through the whole way through. Thanks again, folks. See you later.